Respect your elders, even if they're emotionally manipulative black holes in orthopedic shoes. That's the line people don't say out loud, but oh, do they live it? Welcome, friends, to Buddhist Wisdom for the Elderly, where today we lovingly peel the mask off narcissism with the gentleness of a monk and the precision of a spiritual dentist. Now let's be clear, we're not here to dishonor age. We're here to disentangle it from ego, because aging doesn't turn a narcissist into a saint. It just gives them more time to rehearse their performance. And yes, we disagree with the idea that you owe automatic reverence to someone who's been draining your peace for 40 years. Respect is sacred, not mandatory. In this video, you'll learn how narcissism hides in plain sight, why it hurts so much more in old age, and what to say or not say when the emotional manipulation starts to smell like incense. Each part will walk you through the phrase or behavior to notice, why it hurts, a story or example that'll sound way too familiar, and a wiser, softer Buddhist alternative that doesn't cost your soul. And whatever you do, don't miss part 7. That's the one with the single question that shatters the illusion and frees you from their play. Like spiritually ghosting them, but with clarity. So subscribe and help us reach our first 1,000 subscribers. You bring the attention, we'll bring the tea. Let's begin. Part 2, the narcissist isn't wearing a mask. They are the mask. Let's get something clear right away. Narcissists don't wear a mask to deceive you. They wear a mask because without it, there's nothing underneath. I know, this sounds dramatic, but hear me out. Most of us as we age begin a quiet process of peeling away identities. We let go of being the mother, the provider, the charmer, the achiever. We begin to settle into a softer, truer self. Less show, more soul. But narcissists, they do the opposite. As the world stops applauding, they add glitter. As their charm fades, they turn up the volume. And if you try to reach beneath the surface, hoping there's still a real person in there, you'll find something strange. It's just more surface. I once had tea with a retired psychologist in his 70s. He told me some people don't grow old, they just grow more rehearsed. And isn't that the truth? See, you and I, we wear different faces too. Sure, we act composed at the doctor's office, polite at the bank, slightly dead inside at the family reunion. But we know we're performing. The narcissist doesn't. They believe the performance is who they are. They've invested so many years into being admired, they never learned how to be authentic. And worse, they've convinced themselves that needing love is weakness, but needing admiration is power. Let's bring in a little Buddhist mischief here. In Buddhism, we talk about anatta, the not-self, the idea that the self we cling to is an illusion. But while the average person hears that and goes, oh wow, maybe I'm not who I thought I was, a narcissist hears it and says, exactly. That's why I became something more impressive. They don't let go of the illusion. They double down on it. They become more polished, more charming, more enlightened sounding than anyone else in the room. They'll quote Rumi. They'll talk about energies and boundaries and high vibrations while quietly draining your emotional batteries with every conversation. Have you ever met a person who seemed spiritual, but every conversation left you more confused, more self-doubting, and somehow a little more in debt to them? Congratulations, you've met a spiritual narcissist. The mask just came with prayer beads. Let me give you a little story. There was a man I met in a meditation group, mid-60s, wore a lot of linen, smelled like sage and superiority. He never missed a chance to correct others' breathing. He said things like, your aura feels resistant. Well, one day, an elderly woman in the group mentioned she'd lost her husband. She was in tears. And this man, he told her, that's because you're too attached. Grief is an illusion. No hug, no warmth, just enlightenment, weaponized like a stick to beat her with. That's the mask. Because here's the irony. Narcissists spend their entire lives trying to be seen, but they never see anyone else. And when you stop reflecting their glow, when you stop being their mirror, they either discard you or accuse you of being toxic. Because to them, the worst thing you can do is stop watching the performance. So what does this mean for you? It means stop trying to connect with something that isn't there. Stop waiting for the real them to show up. They already did. You met their final form, polished, hungry, hollow. You met the mask. And if you're still trying to peel it off gently, hoping for some buried soul underneath, I've got bad news. That wasn't a disguise. That was the person. But here's the good news. If a person can be built on illusion, then they can also be unseen with clarity. And we'll get to that soon. But next, we need to talk about why narcissists are so nice. Until you say no. Because behind every gift they give you is a string, and they've already started tugging. Part 3. Narcissistic karma. Why they're always nice? Until you say no. Let's play a little game called Nice or Narcissist. They compliment your sweater. They check in when you're sick. They even say they're so proud of how strong you've been lately. Sounds nice, right? Now say no. Say no, I won't lend you money. No, I won't cover for you again. No, I need space. No, I won't be guilt-tripped like it's a team sport. Watch how fast the temperature drops. Suddenly, you're selfish, ungrateful, cold, maybe even abusive. And you sit there blinking like a confused koala, wondering how you went from angel to enemy in under 5 seconds. That's narcissistic karma. You see, a narcissist's version of kindness isn't kindness, it's currency. And you're the bank. They invest just enough sweetness to keep you emotionally indebted, so that when the bill comes due, you're too polite, too guilt-ridden, or too trauma-bonded to say no. This isn't generosity, it's grooming. Let's make it even more uncomfortable with an elder scenario. You're a senior. You've worked your whole life, built your savings, downsized your home. You're looking forward to a little peace. And then here comes your adult child, all smiles and charm. Mom, you're the only one I can trust. Dad, you always told me to chase my dreams. Grandma, I'd never ask if I wasn't desperate. At first, it feels good to be needed again, to matter. You hand over the car, the money, the spare room, the second chance. And then, you become the villain in your own home. Your boundaries are cold, your opinions are toxic, your needs are too much. Because here's the karmic joke. In their eyes, your only role is to support their role. The moment you stop playing it, the whole fantasy falls apart, and they blame you for ruining the show. Narcissists don't build relationships, they build contracts. Unspoken, unagreed upon, and highly punishable when broken. And the contract says, I will give you the illusion of care as long as you give me control. Let's bring in a Buddhist lens. There's a teaching in the Dhammapada that says, the gift of truth excels all other gifts. But the narcissist's gift is not truth. It's manipulation dressed up in emotional wrapping paper. And the moment you open it, you realize it was never a gift for you. It was a performance for them. Let me tell you a real story. I once knew a woman in her 80s, sharp mind, great laugh, made tea like a samurai. Her son had always been charming. The family called him the Golden One. He called himself spiritual. She paid his rent, co-signed on his car, watched his kids while he went to energy healing retreats. One day she told him she couldn't help anymore. She was tired. She wanted to spend her final years writing poems and gardening. He called her a selfish old woman who never supported his calling. She cried, not because he yelled, but because he actually believed it. That's narcissistic karma. They give only to control. And when you stop playing along, they act like you've committed emotional treason. Now here's the Ramdas twist. The pain isn't just that they manipulated you, it's that you believed it was love. But once you see it clearly, not with bitterness, but with clarity, something miraculous happens. You start remembering what real love feels like. It's quiet, it's mutual. It doesn't need applause, it doesn't come with receipts. It just is. And the best part? You don't have to earn it. Now in the next part, we're going to talk about what happens when a narcissist starts aging and the spotlight gets smaller. Because the stage may shrink, but the performance, oh, it gets louder. Part 4, Aging Narcissists. The spotlight gets smaller, so they get louder. You'd think getting older would mellow people out. Knit some scarves, feed the birds, sit in a garden and ponder the meaning of clouds. But not the aging narcissist. Oh no. When a narcissist ages, they don't go quietly into the soft twilight of elderhood. They start cranking up the volume like a fading rock star at a county fair. You see, something terrifying happens to the narcissist after 60. People stop paying attention. The room stops turning when they walk in. Their charm gets called out as manipulation. Their dramatic pauses no longer land. The younger generation doesn't gasp at their stories because they've heard better ones on YouTube. And when the spotlight starts shrinking, they panic. Imagine a magician who's run out of tricks. The applause is dying down, the lights are dimming, and the only thing left to pull out of their hat is a guilt trip. And they do. Oh, they do. You never call anymore. I guess I don't matter now that I'm old. After all I've done for you, my generation had respect. Let's be clear, aging is hard. Losing relevance, mobility, memory, and visibility, that takes a toll. But the difference between the wise elder and the narcissist is this. The wise elder surrenders to impermanence. The narcissist screams at it. And they don't just scream. They rewrite the story. They cast themselves as the noble victim of a cruel world, cruel family, cruel universe. And if you challenge the script, you're cast as the villain. Elder psychologist Dr. Judith Viorst once said, "There's no greater fear in old age than being forgotten." But for narcissists, it's not about being forgotten. It's about no longer being worshipped. You see, the average person grows older and gradually lets go of the ego. The roles dissolve, the titles fade, and something soft emerges. Wisdom, stillness, acceptance. But the narcissist, they cling harder. And when the external admiration dries up, they start digging into your emotional pockets. Compliments turn to complaints, requests turn to demands, charm turns to coercion. This is what I call spotlight shrinkage syndrome, and it's a hell of a midlife crisis, just with more cardigans. Let me share a story with you. A retired drama teacher, let's call her Maureen, was once the queen of her local community theater. Standing ovations, adoring students. Everyone knew her name. Fast forward to age 76. Fewer friends, no more plays. The phone doesn't ring like it used to. And so, she created drama in her real life. She'd show up uninvited to her daughter's house and insult her cooking. She'd accidentally forward emails filled with backhanded comments to the entire family. She even faked a fall once during Thanksgiving to get everyone's attention, then stood up 5 minutes later and asked, "So what are we grateful for?" You can't make this stuff up. Here's the Buddhist twist. In the teachings on Anicca, impermanence, we're reminded that everything fades. Attention, praise, even the roles we clung to. The narcissist refuses to accept this, so they turn their life into a one-person show with a dwindling audience and increasingly desperate plot lines. But you don't have to stay in the theater. You can leave quietly during intermission. Take your popcorn and never look back. And next, I'll show you how. Because there's a question you can ask, a single, strange spiritual sledgehammer that makes the spotlight go out entirely. But before we drop that bomb, we need to take a quick detour into dangerous territory. What happens when the narcissist is your grandparent or you? Part 5. The Grandparent Narcissist Paradox. Let's get real for a moment, and possibly ruin a few family dinners. There is a sacred stereotype in many cultures, the sweet, cookie-baking, wisdom-dispensing elder. Grandma always smells like cinnamon. Grandpa always has the best stories. They are kind. They are generous. They knit you scarves and send money on your birthday and tell you things like, "Just be yourself, dear." But what if I told you, sometimes Grandma is a narcissist with excellent banana bread? And Grandpa, He might be using his hearing aid as a selective empathy filter. Welcome to the grandparent narcissist paradox, where age earns respect, but not always the kind that's deserved. Because here's the uncomfortable truth. Some narcissists don't fade with time. They fossilize. And instead of letting go of ego, they weaponize age itself. I'm your elder. You should be grateful. I'm old, not stupid. Back in my day, I raised you, so now you owe me. Look, love your elders, honor their stories, but let's stop pretending that age automatically turns a narcissist into the Dalai Lama with dentures. In fact, some elderly narcissists are more manipulative than ever. They just do it with a walker and a quilt on their lap. Let me tell you a story. My friend Lila took care of her grandmother for 6 years. Sweet woman on the outside, white hair, delicate voice, collection of angel figurines that stared at you like judgmental porcelain spies. But every time Lila tried to leave the house, "Are you abandoning me again? I guess I'll just sit here alone and wait for death. Maybe when I'm gone, you'll realize what I meant to you." And then she'd sigh dramatically, turn on the Weather Channel, and ask for a snack. Now, if a 30-year-old romantic partner pulled this, you'd run. But from grandma, you hesitate. You question yourself. You think, maybe she's just lonely. Yes, she's lonely and manipulative. Both can be true. You can have compassion for someone suffering without accepting their abuse. And here's the Buddhist twist. Respect for elders is not blind obedience. It's compassionate awareness. As Thich Nhat Hanh would say, understanding is love's other name. But sometimes, the kindest understanding is this: your suffering doesn't give you the right to cause more. This paradox is especially sharp for caregivers. You might be caring for a parent who belittled you your whole life, or a grandparent who smiles at the nurse and snarls at you. You feel guilty for setting boundaries. You worry you're being selfish. You wonder if it's just old age talking. But deep down, you know the truth. They've always been like this. Old age didn't change them. It just made them slower and sometimes louder. Now, before this turns into a full roast of your family tree, let's flip the mirror. Because the other half of this paradox, what if you're becoming the narcissist? I know, that one stings. But if every conversation starts with you, if your advice is just a disguised demand, if you expect gratitude more than connection, if you constantly remind people what you gave up for them, then it's worth asking, am I loving them, or am I holding them emotionally hostage? Aging gives us a beautiful opportunity to let go of ego, not double down on it, to be remembered with warmth, not relief, to give without keeping score. So if you're an elder, here's a little koan for your teacup. If no one owes you anything, and you still love them, what does that make you? A mirror? A teacher? A truly free human being? Now that's the kind of elder we write poems about. Coming up next, we take a sharp left into another original metaphor. Because narcissists don't just manipulate emotions, they metabolize attention like sugar. And when you cut them off, oh, the withdrawal begins. Part 6. Narcissism is emotional diabetes. Narcissism is emotional diabetes. Let that sink in. Not the kind where you need insulin, but the kind where you can't regulate your own internal supply of validation, so you raid everyone else's emotional fridge. See, a healthy human being has what psychologists call intrinsic regulation. They can feel worthy without applause, loved without flattery, centered without constantly checking to see if someone noticed their new haircut. But narcissists? They're like a sugar addict in a donut shop, with a blood sugar level made entirely of other people's admiration. Praise, attention, envy, fear, it doesn't matter. As long as they're getting some kind of emotional sweetness, they feel alive. And just like with real diabetes, they need more and more to get the same effect. You compliment their cooking? They want to be told they're the best chef in the family. You thank them for advice? Now they're your life coach. You miss a single phone call? Wow, I guess I don't matter to you anymore. It's not just exhausting, It's glucose level dangerous to your peace of mind. Let's bring in a Buddhist lens. In the second of the Four Noble Truths, the Buddha names the cause of suffering, tanha, craving. Not hunger, not desire. Craving, that desperate grasping, like a hand reaching for something that keeps dissolving. Narcissists live in this craving 24/7. They don't want your love. They want your emotional sugar, on demand, with whipped cream and a cherry made of guilt. And here's the really dark part. When you stop giving it to them, they crash. They spiral, they tantrum, they accuse, they rage. And not always with fire, sometimes with silence, icy indifference, or tragic victimhood. That's called supply withdrawal, and it's as real as any addiction. I once watched a middle-aged man, let's call him Dennis, go into full emotional meltdown because his brother stopped liking his posts on Facebook. Let me say that again. He stopped liking his posts. And Dennis called the entire family to stage a passive-aggressive intervention. I just feel like nobody supports me anymore. I'm always there for everyone else. I share your stuff. This man was 58 years old. Not 5. That's not connection. That's sugar panic. Now here's the trick. When you try to explain this to a narcissist, they look at you like you've just stolen their insulin pump. You say, I need space. They hear, you're worthless. You say, this relationship feels one-sided. They hear, you failed as a human. You say, I don't like the way you treat me. They hear, you're no longer the star of the show. And so they retaliate, not to hurt you, but to get their sugar back. They might even start acting nice again, love bombing you with sweetness, attention, even gifts. But remember, this isn't healing, it's bait. You're being lured back into the cycle with frosting on top. So what's the solution? It's not anger. It's not confrontation. It's not matching their chaos. It's dietary restriction, spiritual version. You stop feeding the addiction. You stop being their emotional refrigerator. You realize that detaching from their craving doesn't make you cruel. It makes you healthy. In Buddhism, they say craving is like drinking salt water. It never satisfies, it just makes you thirstier. When you stop being their salt water, they might thrash. But you finally start to breathe again. And that, my friend, is the first sign you're healing. But next, we're going to give you a weapon so subtle, so quiet, so spiritually surgical, it doesn't confront the narcissist. It undoes them, because you don't need a fight. You need a question. A single question that shatters the illusion and makes the mask fall off like dried glue. Part 7. The question that shatters the mask. There's something strange about narcissists. They always think they're ready for battle. They come armed with excuses, blame, and a detailed PowerPoint presentation on why you are the problem. They're not afraid of conflict. They're afraid of quiet, and they're terrified of questions they can't control. Because remember, narcissists don't seek connection. They seek control of the narrative. As long as they can define who they are in your eyes, they feel safe, even loved. But what happens when you don't play the game? What happens when you don't accuse them or cry or send long texts about how much they hurt you? What happens when you just ask one question? Let me set the scene. No raised voice, no trembling hands, no dramatic music, just you and them, calm, centered, maybe even a little amused. You look them in the eye and say, what would you do if you could never impress anyone again? Silence. Their pupils contract, their breath catches, the room shrinks. Because this question doesn't attack their character, it goes deeper. It attacks the entire architecture of their false self. See, most people build identity around truth, around values, around compassion, joy, pain, love, even regret. But narcissists? They build identity around reaction. They need to impress, seduce, dominate, dazzle. Because if they stop being impressive, they fear they'll stop being anything at all. So when you ask this question, you're not just poking their ego, you're asking them to imagine a world where they are invisible, where they can no longer perform, where the applause has stopped, where no one is clapping, not because they're mad, but because they've simply stopped watching. That's not an insult to a narcissist. That's death. Let me tell you what usually happens when you ask this. They pause, just for a moment, long enough for you to see it. The mask flickers. The breath shifts. The charm drops half a second late. Then comes the deflection. That's a weird question. Why are you being so dramatic? What's that supposed to mean? They might laugh it off, scoff, pretend they don't care. But inside, they are spiraling because for one split second, you didn't give them feedback. You gave them a mirror. And mirrors don't lie. I once watched a woman ask this question to her older sister, chronic narcissist, professional victim, master of the dramatic exit. She asked it during a quiet car ride. The sister chuckled, then went dead silent for the rest of the trip. Later, she unfollowed her on Facebook, sent a 3-paragraph text about toxic energy, and refused to speak to her for 3 months. Why? Because she'd been seen. This question doesn't win you an argument. It ends the performance. Not with a bang, but with the quiet horror of realizing that without the mask, the stage, the spotlight, there might not be anything left. And if that sounds cruel, I want you to remember this. You didn't hurt them. You offered them a door to authenticity. They just didn't want to walk through it. But you walked away with something they'll never understand. Peace. Next, I'll show you what to do with that peace. How to hold it, protect it, and most importantly, never give it away again. Because narcissists don't need punishment. They need something far more disarming. Your silence. Part 8. Don't try to win. Try to disappear. Let's get something straight right now. You're not going to win against a narcissist. There's no trophy at the end of this. No final courtroom scene where they sob and say, "You were right. I'm a manipulative emotional parasite. I've been terrible, and I'm so sorry." Nope. If you're waiting for that scene, you're not in a healing arc. You're in a hostage situation. And the door? It's been unlocked the whole time. You just haven't walked through it because you're still trying to win. Let me give it to you straight. The Buddhist way. The game is suffering. And the only way to win is not to play. See, narcissists are like spiritual pickpockets. They're not interested in truth. They're interested in access. Access to your energy, your emotions, your attention, your mind. And the more you react, even with righteous anger, the more they win. They don't care if you're crying, screaming, quoting your therapist, or posting cryptic Instagram stories. If you're reacting, you're still in the show. I once heard a monk say, "Some demons don't need to be exorcised. They just need to be ignored long enough to starve." And baby, that's the vibe. So don't try to win. Don't send the essay. Don't argue about the timeline of events. Don't try to make them see. They won't. Not because they can't, but because their survival depends on not seeing it. Instead, do something radical. Disappear. Not literally, unless you want to buy a yurt and grow mushrooms, in which case go off. I mean emotionally, spiritually, mentally. Detach. Not in bitterness, not in pettiness, but in peace. Let your reactions dissolve. Let the bait hang untouched. Let their drama echo into the quiet space where your boundaries used to be broken. Picture this. They send a passive-aggressive text. You read it like it's a weather report for a city you don't live in. Mild irritation, chance of drama. Not your problem. They tell others lies about you. You go make tea. You call a friend who actually knows you. You do not respond, not because you're weak, but because you've left the arena. In Buddhist psychology, we call this upekkha, equanimity. It's not coldness, it's clarity. It's the wisdom to know the difference between what's yours and what's their circus. Now don't get me wrong, disappearing isn't always easy, especially if the narcissist is family, or someone you've loved, or someone who once made you feel special. But here's the truth. They didn't love you. They loved the way you made them feel about themselves. That's not love. That's dependence with a pretty costume. So take your silence. Take your clarity. Take your exit. Because here's the plot twist they never saw coming. When you stop reacting, you become invisible to their ego. And when you're invisible to their ego, you're finally visible to yourself. That, my friend, is the real win. And in the next part, the final curtain call, I'll show you how to stay free. No relapses. No, maybe they've changed. No backstage passes to their drama. Just one last teaching and a laugh on the way out. So what did we learn today, dear ones? We learned that narcissists don't just wear masks. They are masks. That their kindness often comes with a receipt. That some grandparents guilt trip better than airlines. And that silence, not shouting, is how you win the war you never wanted to fight. We learned that you don't need their apology to heal. You don't even need their attention. What you need is a cup of tea, a little detachment, and just enough spiritual sass to look them in the eye and say, I don't accept returns on your projections. If that made you smile, even a little, do us a favor. Click like so this teaching reaches others who've been emotionally tap-danced on by someone who calls it love. And if you want more videos like this, stories, insights, and Buddhist wisdom for the wonderfully complex mess of aging, subscribe. Help us get to 1,000 subscribers, not for fame, but so we can keep making these little moments of clarity together. Comment below if you've ever met a narcissist, in robes, in your family, or in the mirror. And remember, your peace is not a group project. This has been Buddhist wisdom for the elderly. Breathe, laugh, let go. We'll see you in the next one.